From the opinion pages of the Wall Street Journal, this is Potomac Watch.
Is President Biden about to put the brakes on a growing export business of liquefied natural gas? And would that be good Democratic politics, even if it's bad economics? Welcome, I'm Kyle Peterson with the Wall Street Journal. We are joined today by my colleagues, columnists Alicia Finley and Kim Strassel. The president has some discretion over export permits for liquefied natural gas, and the latest news on Wednesday is from the New York Times. The White House is directing the Energy Department to expand its evaluation of a new project to consider its impact on climate change, as well as the economy and national security, according to anonymous sources. Let's listen to a clip of Senator Mitch McConnell, the Republican leader in the Senate, addressing this question on the floor.
The administration's war on affordable domestic energy has been bad news for American workers and consumers alike. Radical policies from the EPA are killing jobs in coal and auto manufacturing. Regulatory nudging is forcing automakers to produce a supply of electric vehicles for which there is insufficient demand. And now further limits to LNG exports will only send energy costs higher at a time when the West is trying to reduce its reliance on Russian energy. This agenda is not just bad for America at home either. It's directly at odds with America's interests on the world stage.
Alicia, what is the power that the White House has to exercise here? And can you give us more of a sense of what President Biden is considering doing?
So the Department of Energy, which has to approve exports to countries in which we do not have free trade agreements. And so that's actually most of the world. That includes Europe and Japan and most places where we actually send LNG. Countries to which we have free trade agreements, those are basically automatically approved. But otherwise, the Energy Department has to conduct a review. And actually, it's required to approve them if they are in the quote-unquote public interest, right? So this is a very broad delegation and provides a lot of discretion to the Energy Department to determine what is in the public interest. Now, under the Trump administration, I wouldn't say that they were automatically approved, but they only took about 7 weeks. The Energy Department under Biden has been kind of dawdling and has been taking at least 11 months. One project has been held up for over a year. So that's one power that the Biden administration has over LNG. There's also FERC, the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission, which also has to do environmental impact statements for these projects. If you recall, a couple of years ago, there was a little bit of a brouhaha because the head of the FERC had proposed doing climate reviews and considering the downstream carbon emissions of these projects. And by downstream, I mean the combustion, how much carbon would be emitted when the LNG is eventually basically burned for fuel. And this was basically a sinister way to block these projects. Now, FERC ended up dialing that back and putting that plan on pause amid very vociferous opposition by Joe Manchin, who skewered the administration for that. But nonetheless, FERC has been really kind of slow to do these reviews. And because of that, after it does the review, then it goes to the Energy Department. So there's a lot of bureaucracy, and you can see how some of these projects can be kind of caught in red tape, and the administration can just kind of drag its feet on approving. Maybe they will eventually approve these projects, but it really does slow them down and creates a lot of uncertainty.
The project that was referred to earlier in this New York Times article is a $10 billion proposed facility on the coast of Louisiana that would be the largest natural gas export terminal in the United States. And Kim, I think this is a fascinating question because I agree with Mitch McConnell that the national security interests are on the side of the United States exporting this. And think about the way that Russia has tried in recent years to use energy and its natural gas exports as a political and a security weapon. And in the wake of Vladimir Putin's invasion of Ukraine, natural gas exports to Europe have increased. And it seems to me that we have a real long-term interest in telling allies in Europe and also beyond Europe that if you need this energy, if you need natural gas, we would be more than happy to sell it to you. That will be good for American jobs. It will be good for places like Louisiana, and not only the jobs working on those terminals, but the jobs building those terminals. And it will be good for the free world, to use that term, if we don't have to rely on countries like Russia for their energy exports. And so I'm a little bit puzzled. What is the political upside that President Biden is considering as he's thinking about putting a hold on these kinds of projects?
It's amazing to me that people forget the things that you just noted there, Kyle. I mean, energy, we talk about it in terms of prices, the economy, but the national security piece of it is absolutely vital. And prior presidents learned the hard way, and I'm speaking here of Nixon, Ford, Carter, that when you don't have any choices, when you are stuck with very few options domestically in terms of your own supply, how much you are at the complete mercy of the world's rogues. And of course, we suffered through that during the oil shocks of the 1970s. And I can tell you that Jimmy Carter, Richard Nixon would have loved to have had the domestic industry we have now. It would have given them a much better hand in dealing with some of those. And this has helped the United States hugely as well, too. I mean, recently we've had more threats from OPEC to reduce supply, and it hasn't meant as much because the United States, even under Biden, and this is mostly because of increases in efficiency in private well drillers, not necessarily because of Biden's management of federal reserves of energy, but they have managed to increase production, and we have continued to be a net exporter of oil in the world. And so those OPEC threats haven't mattered as much. When you have no options to play, suddenly Iran and Russia get to call the shots. Look at what happened immediately in the aftermath of Russia's invasion of Ukraine, and its threats followed through in some cases to ratchet down the supply of energy to Germany, Western Europe, and other players in order to try to make them back down in that war. It's only been because the United States has dramatically increased its LNG exports that we've been able to give aid and comfort to Ukraine and Western Europe to continue that fight. The entire course of the war might be different if we hadn't been able to do that. In 2022, global LNG exports to Europe rose 75% compared to 2021, and the U.S. exports to that area nearly tripled. That is huge, and our ability to do that rests entirely on the president agreeing to these additional exports and export permits. And the thing to me, to get to your question about Biden, is right now, everything argues for him to do this. The national security argument, the Ukrainian argument, gas prices argument, energy prices argument in general, given the number of people who use natural gas in their homes, environmental reasons, given that natural gas is cleaner than anything else and is replacing things like coal globally. The only thing that's holding him back are his wacky environmentalist constituency that are angry at him about a couple of decisions he made, which in my mind don't even go far enough, but in particular the Alaska Willow drilling project. So this would all be for political stop. And even then, Kyle, I'm not sure. I know that the president is worried about core constituencies of his being demoralized with the administration, not showing enthusiasm, maybe not showing up to vote. But the consequences of cutting back on LNG, hurting his own war effort in Ukraine, potentially seeing higher prices in the United States as he goes into election, in my mind, the political risks of that far outweigh any of those of some grumpiness on behalf of green groups.